Hey, everybody watching. It's Stephen Dawn's magical hour. I don't know what else to call this. Just wanted to have a fun little podcast on Friday morning. And we wanted to talk about, training, Tableau training. I'll let Steve introduce himself because I'm babbling here. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, you know what? I'm completely unprepared for this as well, Dawn. So I'm going to babble too, if that's okay. Hi all. I'm Steve Adams, Viz DJ. I've been doing Tableau training for quite a while now. So Dawn and I have been speaking for quite a long time, and this is the first time we decided to go live on this format, isn't it? But we've actually been chatting for months and months. So I'm happy to be here and talk about anything you want to, Dawn.
Well, we could talk about our session that we did at TC25. So Steve and I, after a couple of months of preparation, we did a session called Breaking Free from Spreadsheets. For those of you that may be, making Tableau dashboards for previous Excel users and trying to break them out of the Excel use case. So Steve, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what we did on stage, our magical hour there.
Yeah, another magical hour. It was brilliant, actually. I really enjoyed it. It was a 6,000-mile journey for me to get all the way over there, and it was well worth the trip. It's one of the topics, I think, which has always been very dear to my heart because too many people building stuff blame the end user. And really, we need to put the mirror on ourselves quite often and realize that actually it's our challenge to solve to keep people where the decisions can be made better, which typically obviously is within Tableau, rather than some spreadsheet somewhere. We all know that really, but we've got to take the onus on our shoulders to make it happen.
It was a full house. That was my very first time speaking to that many people. We had a total of like over 600 people sign up for the entire day. Like Steve and I did 2 sessions. I was at the same time as my colleagues, which I was disappointed. Our first thing, Tuesday morning, we went on stage, had our coffee. We're texting, "Are you there yet?" Getting on stage. And I was disappointed because I wanted to see Will Perkins and Kyle Massey's session. And we had over 15 people from JP Morgan, and of course they went to theirs. I understand.
No, you're joking. You're joking.
They went to theirs. They didn't go to ours, but that's okay. That's okay. Theirs was
didn't lobby hard enough beforehand, Dawn.
Next year we will be the ones that they go. No, their session was VizQL and Chill.
But you know why that really was, Dawn? It's because ours was being recorded and they didn't get theirs recorded.
That's I think theirs I think was recorded later. So yeah, ours was recorded first thing.
Yeah.
And trying not to be like intimidated by the crowd that was like there. I used to be very scared of speaking in public. I don't know if you could even tell that, Steve, but I was like, I remember being very nervous speaking in front of people way back in the day. And now I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes, right?
I don't know whether I'm nervous or not. You always get a little bit of adrenaline pumping though, and it makes the presentation better. If you don't have any adrenaline going or excitement, then I think the crowd picks that up. But no, you're right. It was the first session was a full house, and it was really exciting to see. I think there was literally one spare seat, which was mine. Yeah, my name reserved.
I gave out Cat's Coffee and Tableau buttons. Just thinking of fun things, and then Steve picked the Cat's Coffee and Tableau interface for this. Just trying to make Tableau learning fun. This is what Steve and I try to do. Steve brings a lot of energy. We had fun Excel shirts. You should look online for Steve's Excel shirt.
It'll be on my LinkedIn profile over the weekend. I keep forgetting to put that up actually, but there's a good picture that Annabelle took, which is going to go up on my profile. It was good. It was magical. The one thing that I think was a bit disconcerting is that we couldn't hear the audience while we're up on stage, and trying to get that interactivity with an audience I think is quite useful, which is what I think we did in the second session. I think we got everybody to stand up just for the hell of it, didn't we? Because it was the end of the day.
So let's talk about teaching in person versus like virtually, like self-paced learning. I'm still working on my coffee here. Self-paced learning, when you have like learning paths and you do the things yourselves versus having like a classroom. As a trainer, like I love the classroom because you never know what questions students are going to ask because everybody thinks differently. And it's kind of like this magical, it's also why I love brainstorming sessions too, because it's like, wow, I never thought of that before, but now I'm going to research that if I didn't know the answer to something. So, Steve, what are your thoughts? Self-paced versus classroom?
Oh, wow. I mean, the energy in a classroom, whether it's virtual or in person, I think is a determining factor. It's much better for me as a presenter and a trainer, but I think it's also a lot better for the people in the room. You tend to find very, very few people leave a training session. Let's be clear about this. You know, the one big problem that we all know about with e-learning is the completion ratio is lower than you'd ever imagine. It's almost single digits, right? In terms of percentages. And there's a reason for that. You know, it's not just the fact that you can literally turn it off and turn it back on again. It's the fact that you're not engaged anywhere near as much in the room yourself. And being able to ask questions and interrupt and get clarification, that really helps. But also, and I always think that even if you don't say anything yourself and you don't want to say anything yourself, listening to other people's questions, you learn so much from that as well.
And it's okay to ask questions. I know some people are like nervous, but that's how you learn. You learn by asking questions, and, you know, so never be afraid to either make mistakes too, because that's the other thing is people are afraid to share a mistake whenever, you know, I'm doing a class and I'm like, share your screen. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, and I tell about some of the silly things that I did when I first started, you know, Tableau, because Tableau is kind of a complex tool. And Alteryx, if you were an Alteryx user, I love Alteryx. You know, you have to learn 60 plus tools. So it's like you have to think about data and like figure it out. So it's you're going to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how we all learn. So.
And interestingly, I think one of the things that I wasn't expecting when we transitioned from in-person to virtual several years ago, that actually, you know what, we've got lots of different types of learners out there, and there are different ways to classify them. But the introverted people, the people that don't want to stand up, put their hand up and ask a question, in a virtual scenario, they can go anonymous, you know, and they can either chat and ask a question that way, or they can actually do a private message to me and I don't want anybody to know who's asking this question. That's fine. I can still answer their question then. So that's really, really good for those people that don't feel confident enough themselves to pipe up.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and back to self-paced learning. So I'm currently doing an eCornell course online for Python. You have to be very disciplined with and be good at time management when you're doing self-paced training, I've noticed. And we all know, like, when you're doing reports and that kind of thing, you may have a fire drill coming to you. So you have to stop what you're doing and address that fire drill. So it's hard, you know, and then sometimes you're like, you know what, I'm going to go back and watch that video, and you never get to it because something else always pops up. Whereas a classroom, it's live, it's there, the instructor is there, you can ask questions. The other thing I noticed with self-paced learning is if a student gets stuck, you know, there's no one to ask. They have to search forums, or like, how do they initiate like a chat? So once again, classroom is very important, and you get more out of it than you think. Like, I think a lot of people aren't aware about how much they get out of that environment. So
what's your go-to playback speed when you're watching videos?
What do you mean?
If I'm doing self-paced learning, I never do it on a 1-to-1 speed. I always go maybe 1.5, depending on who's talking. I might go for ×2 as well. But it kind of just, you end up with Mickey Mouse, right? Talking to you every single time.
I pause, do the session, do whatever I need to do, then go back. Like, that's the beauty of after the session is recorded. Like, I watched Steve and my session after TC25. I watched the whole thing, taking notes about like what could I have done better, you know, notes for next time. Can you stop saying so much? Can you please stop saying I know there's different places you could do. I know there's like Toastmasters, where they count your ums, and I'm like, please, I would not want someone to count my ums and my pauses, and it's just like, yeah. So getting that exposure and doing it is always the best for speaking in public. A little tip and trick for speaking, in front of people. So.
If you're going to speak in front of people as well, practice. Go crazy, right? Speak out loud. Don't practice in your head. I think it really helps when you're talking out loud. I personally always say to people that I think through my mouth. I can't think in my head. I have to actually talk to somebody. So I love having these conversations because, as you say, I mean, something new is always coming out when we're chatting anyway. It comes out of my mouth as often as other people's.
My husband is well aware about me thinking with my mouth too. So. I think he's quite aware.
He tells you not to quite often, doesn't
he? Right. And another interesting fact is like Steve and I are in different time zones. That's why this is at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So what we would do is we would record our bits, our session, and then send it to the other person. Like, here's my YouTube recording of what I'm doing, And then when we got together before the session on Monday, or our session on Tuesday, we got together Monday to rehearse, and it went much faster. We did our very first try was like what? It was like 20 minutes. It was like, oh boy.
Okay, that's not a problem. We can do that.
Let's take it a step back and bring up the points that we wanted to bring up and that kind of thing. So
no, we were both quite nervous, weren't we, that it wouldn't that it would be too long. So I think that was a massive relief the first time we ran through it. But I think both sessions were within seconds of finishing on the right time. It worked really well that way. But practice every time, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little bit about Fast Train Slow Coach. What is that, Steve?
I did a presentation on Fast Train Slow Coach a couple of years ago when I was looking at morphing my provision and I always look to constantly innovate, but also evolve what we're doing. And I found I was delivering a lot of training sessions and people were giving me brilliant feedback, right? And I loved that. But I didn't feel that we were going where we needed to. So I kept on sitting down with clients, and not necessarily the delegates, but their bosses and whoever was hiring me in to do the training, and to talk about, well, what really matters isn't however many people come onto my training course and what great feedback they give me. It's so what, the next step is utilizing that and putting it into practice, being better themselves in terms of speed of delivery of dashboards, but also enabling their team and their organization to make better decisions. What do they need and how do we do that? So that was one element. And another element was, and I always say this, is that theory and practice are the same in theory, but not in practice. So you can teach somebody theoretically and they can walk away thinking, yeah, that's cool. I understand it. Some demo data. It works beautiful because the data was designed for it to work beautiful. And then when they get into real life, it all collapses. It all falls apart. They lose their confidence. The data isn't shaped the same way. Their needs are a little bit different to what the training was, and they don't know how to adapt and take it to the next level. So then we talked around, well, how can we overcome that? And we started realizing that many people have got very different learning styles, firstly. And secondly, people really only learn properly when it's in the context of something that they need to deliver. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of slow coach and fast train was, well, let's just give the people what they need quickly to get up to speed, and then walk them through the process of actually delivering via some coaching mechanisms. So allowing people to get the confidence to start working, but then actually put it into practice and start delivering results.
So Steve is a coach. And I think in my corporate environment, I think it might be mentoring is like another way of like saying the title, and it's hard in large organizations too, when you have like so many people you don't know who you don't know could possibly help you coach. But that's why, even Andy Kriebel, besides Steve, and there's some other people, offer coaching out there in Tableau, because Tableau is known as like a complex tool, Alteryx can be a very complex tool too, for those of you that are Alteryx users. Not saying that you shouldn't use Tableau Prep. It's just what I've used. It's just what I'm comfortable with. So use cases, definitely talking about use cases. That's what I try to bring up in my classes. And it's hard, especially if you're dealing with a rather large class. I've taught like a lot of classes that are like 130 up to 160 people. You know, like someone could be in marketing, somebody could be in finance, and you know, it's hard to go over like their specific use case. You try to think of generally what is a data set that everybody could use. Well, Tableau gives you samples, Superstore data. Whereas like, nope, not everybody's had like a business. Like they don't know that. So what I would suggest for others watching, if you want to learn these kinds of things, pick a data set that interests you. I know Alteryx has weekly challenges. You know, you could even search, like there was Taylor Swift data set, there was Pokemon data set, you know, just like pick something that interests you that you could explore the data and figure that out. Shan has a question for us. She's like, how do you control the clash, specifically a virtual class? She said she's been in my Tableau virtual session and always been amazed how I can control and answer questions with that big of a class online, and then making sure the students were able to follow the lesson. Thank you so much. That was not a plug. I did not pay Shan to say this.
No, I did.
So, crowd control. I've learned some tips just from doing this from so long, but then also watching others. A friend of mine, Vishnu Kumar, when I watched a session with him, somebody had asked what was considered a left field question. It had nothing to do with what the session we were doing. And he was like, that question is out of scope for this session. Let's address it at the end of the session. I was like, oh my God, I'm using that phrase from now on. That is gold. So sorry, that question is out of scope. So it's just pausing and for the appropriate, you know, like, oh, hey, I've been talking for a while. Let's take a break and see if anybody has a question. And then I think you just make it personable and allow people to be comfortable to ask questions. Like Steve and I were talking about before, like that was one thing that I had to learn, is that I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert per se, but I had no idea that some people just do not like to raise their hand and ask a question in class. So the whole benefit of being virtual and being anonymous is that you can, with virtual sessions, is you can be anonymous and ask those questions. But people have asked a question or even sent me an email after the session saying, I have this question, you know, or they've pinged me. So it's just, you know, being open, being friendly, you know, not discouraging anybody from asking a question, saying, oh, this question's terrible. No, like there's no terrible
What a silly question that is. How dare you?
No, don't make
Have you not been listening to me?
Yeah, don't make the person feel bad. Like no question is silly. No question is bad. So
on that point, just picking up on that phraseology, Dawn, actually, I use that very word right at the beginning of a new training course. I always say to people, there are no stupid questions.
Yeah.
There's only stupid answers, and I'm the only one allowed to give those.
Yeah.
And you need to give people that ability to just raise their hand and ask something and never put them down, because there really are no silly questions.
And the fact that they may not see me do something perfectly and I'm like, whoops, sorry, I'm still working on my coffee here, you know. Like Steve and I trying to figure out how to get this to work this morning. That was behind the scenes that you all did not see.
I hope, unless we pressed play before we realized.
Yeah. Don and Steve versus technology, you know.
Who needs it?
Oh man. But
I think just something coming to mind on that, Shan, as well. It does matter, of course, in terms of who's in the room, who's in the training course. So one thing about a training course is people tend to, as Dawn was saying, you know, you have a group of people coming in. Some of them know each other, but a lot of people don't know each other. So it takes a bit of time for them to get comfortable as well. And so give them a bit of an opportunity to get to know each other, I always find is a good idea. And there's like a scaffolding technique you can take whereby you kind of break your sessions down into three parts, where the first part is like a group discussion, people chiming in, giving you a bit of an opportunity to talk around the subject. And it may be, give me an example where this hasn't worked, or give me an example where this has worked. Tell me what you've done in the past, because as soon as you give them something to talk about that they're comfortable, it's easier for them to start talking as well. So you can do that in a group session. And then the second scaffold is to maybe set assignments where they can go off into rooms in that session, maybe a group of 5 or 6 people, for example. You know, most of the webinar stuff, the Zoom stuff, allows you to just set up random number of rooms and click a button and everybody goes in. So they work in smaller groups, and you can change those groups around if you've got multiple training sessions, so that they're in different groups each time, so they get to meet different people as well. And then when you've got a real assignment, then they sit down and do it on their own. But that opportunity, that scaffolding approach, means that they get more exposure at a group level, but also at a smaller group level, to feel more comfortable asking questions. And you tend to find over a period of time, the questions get better and better through that approach as well.
We recently did a session where Craig Hurd, he is a colleague of mine that has a Viz of the Day. I keep shouting out there. I was so impressed. His dashboards are amazing. He did a session for us called Dashboard Revisited, which Steve here came up with the terminology. Someone suggested pimp my Viz, and I was like, no, we can't do that. So Dashboard Revisited. Steve, thank you for creating
I didn't even realize I came up with that, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he came up with the term. I stole it, used it, but he asked the crowd. We started the session off. Well, he came up with all of this. I'm not gonna say we, like, very creative, Craig, if you're listening. Where we basically take a beginner dashboard and we enhance it. That was the whole point of the session. And Craig asked the crowd, okay, so what don't you like about this dashboard? What is wrong with it? And people would chime in. We had quite a bunch of different users speak about, like, oh, the colors are all the same for the different charts, or, you know, there's lots of bar charts here, you know, like, and it was interactive. So and a lot of people enjoyed it because of that interactivity. So I want to do another one, but I'm switching roles. So that might be a future podcast, maybe, or a Tableau, user group session with Data Plus Women US Northeast that I lead. Or maybe just a fun Steve and Dawn's magical hour session with, you know, Dashboard Revisited, because Steve coined the term. You didn't copyright it, so you can't earn any cash.
No, I did. I've written it down somewhere, probably.
Oh, okay.
On that point, I was doing a training course this week on visual analytics best practices, and we do a lot of that on that training course, where you take something and you discuss what's good about it and what's wrong about it, normally in the context of something, because obviously otherwise you can just go wild. So we focus in on certain elements, you know, cognitive overload, bad use of color, or whatever. And you're right, people love talking about it, and they love picking up and reviewing other people's work. And I always say this because in my coaching sessions, we do peer reviews of real work as well. And I think the most value isn't from other people giving you input on your dashboard. It's you giving input on other people's dashboard, because you learn so much more when you're critiquing, and you can then apply it to your own work as well.
We had a training program where you had to critique, just like you're doing, where we had a proctor. There was 2 of us, and we would have to come in on a dashboard, and it was hard to, like, tell someone what was wrong with their dashboard. So the Dashboard Revisited session was something that I had mocked up, you know, and then so that way it's not anybody's specific dashboard. But I think that's the hardest thing is sometimes people are afraid of confrontation and asking the hard questions, or making the statements that could hurt someone else's feelings. And you can construct it in a way where it is constructive criticism, where they can learn from it. Say, I like what you did here, but what I think you could improve. Like, there's whole studies about this, like online, like ways to give constructive feedback. So that way you're not directly coming out being like, I hate lollipop donut charts. What are you doing? You know, like you can say, hey, I noticed you use this. Here's the issue with using a donut chart is like your eye immediately is drawn to like that part of the dashboard, which distracts from this other chart where you're trying to convey KPIs or something like that. You know what I mean? So what do you think, Steve? How to give constructive criticism? Any tips for that?
How to give constructive criticism. That's an interesting one. We've talked about this before, the F word, haven't we? The
Yeah.
F word. It's difficult to receive feedback, and it's also difficult to give feedback.
Yeah.
And I think bringing in that familiarity is useful. So simplistically, when I say we do the coaching sessions, and it's good to just turn up and rock up, listening to other people giving feedback helps give you confidence about adding to that as well. But I think as the facilitator, it's important to keep reminding everybody your opinion matters. And so asking specific people for a bit of feedback in a nice way is useful, because it encourages people to know that they're going to be asked a question. So they then start to think about what could that feedback be. So you kind of set them up to say, okay, I'm going to be asking everybody for a bit of feedback. So have a think about what you want to say. And it's okay to say, everybody said the same thing, but tell me in your own way as well. So that's one aspect, because on the coaching programs I give, there's always people who are brand new, but there's always people who have been there for a long time. And so watching other people do something is a great way to give yourself a bit of confidence. You said yourself, watching the trainer make mistakes. Oh, great. Even the trainer's making mistakes, So that gives people the freedom and the flexibility to do the same thing as well. I think that helps.
And I'll always add humor. Like, I did that on purpose. I was testing you. You passed. You passed the test. Congrats. Congrats. I meant to do that. Totally meant to do that. Everybody's human. So yeah. Oh man. But Steve and I have been working on some things. I don't know if we want to kind of give some hints about the things that we're working on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a couple of areas where we've been talking about doing some co-delivery on training sessions, right? So it'd be quite cool to get some people across the pond on the same training sessions and on the delivery side as well. And I think Dawn and I both really enjoy delivering wow factors, right? I mean, it's that wow moment we're looking for, that aha. And that's what I really enjoy about the training. So we've been looking at how we can do that. And it's not necessarily about really complex advanced stuff. It's about practical applications of Tableau. I mean, I think, taking a basic training course is great, but there are so many things you don't have the time in that training course to get people to look at and think about how they can do things with reasonably basic knowledge. So it's then the application, isn't it? That's that taking that basic knowledge and putting it into practice ASAP and getting some value from it.
You posted a video this week that I've been thinking about all week. I wanted to redo or figure out, like, it was a bar chart with a reference line, but you were showing variance. So the gap between the end of the bar and say a reference line is, your previous month of data, highlighting that difference in red, or if it's over that reference line in green. And that blew my mind. I was like, wow, this should be like a Workout Wednesday thing, because like I would have figured out how to do that. So Steve has a video teaser about, oh, hey, you can do this. He mentions that you could do it with a calculated field, but Dawn here was like, how do you do it? I want to know how to do it. So you piqued my curiosity. So after the session, you're going to have to like tell me the calculated field, and
It's 3 calculated fields, actually. It's 3. That's all you need. 3 calculated fields, and you're stacking these bars. You're stacking it together. It's easy.
So I just designed an intermediate course where I'm not sure if people are listening can reuse calculated fields. That's a real pain point, is if you're ever doing month over month, year over year, or week over week analysis, all of the calculations that you have to create in order to point it in a visualization. I find that if you save those calculated fields, there's certain methods that you can use to reuse them. And I gave that to a group of students and they were like, I can reuse these? And I was like, yeah, you can. Just swap out the date fields. And I showed them the Lindsay Poulter method, which I've talked about in a past blog tip, but just being able to see it live was just like their aha moment. So I was so happy that I could give them that information, that they didn't have to type up date calculations. So there's lots of little tips that Steve and I have figured out that we have in our little cap of tricks, tips and tricks, that we're looking somehow to distribute to other people. So more to come for Steve and Dawn's next magical hours. Maybe we'll have a magical hours that people can sign up for.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Teaching some intermediate to advanced tips. So if you haven't had a chance to see Steve's variance video,
have a look. It's only 3 minutes long or something. I'm into doing reels at the moment, man. I'm quite enjoying it. The only thing I don't enjoy is editing myself.
I want to know how you get your head like all the way at the top. Like I'm not advanced that advanced. You like in.
I just it's nothing. There's nothing clever at all. I literally just go like this.
That's how you get the circle up there. Okay, cool.
I'm joking. I'll give you a 10-minute run by. It's really easy. It's really easy.
Okay.
Cool. Somebody else asked me that same question. Actually, I think Fee did.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of YouTube videos and stuff out there where people just are the masters of video editing, and I feel like very like I just hit record, you know.
The problem is I enjoy playing around with those things a bit too much. But that's when you learn, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Well, what other topics do you want to talk about, Steve? Other stuff and things that we could talk about.
Yeah. Well, what can we talk about? So when coming back to the sort of fast train versus slow coach aspect, one of the things you probably get this all the time as well. People, funnily enough, everywhere are just too busy. They're too busy to turn up to things where they don't really know where they're going to get the value. So a training course is one thing, right? Okay, I need to learn how to use something. I'll go up to that training course. But then putting it into practice is the hard piece.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea then we talked about mentor, talk about coaching. I think group coaching and group mentoring is really valuable because it means you can literally just drop in when you've got something to ask or when you've got time to learn. That's one thing. So it's not that you're scheduled, it's a 2-day training course or a scheduled, it's 3 lots of something. It's just, okay, this hour every week, drop in when you got a problem. But the simple piece of advice, and you might have seen this somewhere else, is that if you spend 100 hours a year trying to learn something, you will end up being in the top 5% of that thing, whatever that is, whether it's learning cello or the piano or a guitar or tableau or Alteryx. And the nice thing is that boils down, and I say this to people now very specifically because it piques their curiosity. I say, just pick up Tableau for 16 minutes a day. That's all it takes. 16 minutes a day. And don't try and learn something. Try and answer a question. You know, so literally to say, okay, there's a question in my data that I've been wanting to ask a question, and I'll use Tableau to answer that question, because you will ultimately learn quite a lot in that period of time because you're actually delivering something. So as a hint, as a tip and a trick on anything, just do it for 16 minutes a day.
Yeah. Sean Adams, another Adams that I know, he talked about a knowing doing gap. Like there's a gap between knowing and then actually doing it. So applying is exactly what you're saying. Like in practice, okay, Dawn showed me all these cool concepts, but how do I do it with my data? Like, well, what kind of questions are you trying to answer with your data? You know, that's why I've taught, you know, sets, like how you can kind of drill down into the data with a scatter plot. That's like a very simple use case that kind of helps, like, oh, okay, well, why do I have outliers? Let's look at more around these outliers. So Tableau's sets, you could just highlight those 2 areas and then use that as a filter with other views to answer that question, like what is causing that outlier. So that's one way to kind of, like Steve's saying, 16 minutes a day, do something to just answer that very simple question.
Yeah. And as you said yourself, you know, however interesting the training data sets are, you try and make them as interesting as you can, but you can still take that one lesson and apply that to your own data. Again, in one of those 16-minute sessions, basically, you know, we did something really interesting on Superstore. Now let's do it on my data. Because then that's when you realize that your data is shaped differently. So you have to do it slightly differently. And that's when you start to learn, because you're picking it apart.
Like looking at Taylor Swift data. Well, when did she go on tour with Billboard heights? Like, you know, is there a correlation with something with Taylor Swift's data? You know, let's just take a data set that you like, you know, Lego sales. Like, I don't know. Oh man. But yeah. So any other items we want to talk about, Steve? I think we can come up on wrapping our session up.
No, the only thing I would say is if you're not listening to this live, but you still have questions, feel free to ping us. But also, you've alluded to the fact we'll be doing something else in the future. I mean, if people have got ideas or questions about what they'd like us to cover in the future, then ping us on that as well, whether it's something specific to learning Tableau or whether it's the philosophy of how to train and teach. Because I like working on both sides of that fence, you know, helping people enable other people is definitely part of my thing, you know.
And it's rewarding. It's so rewarding to help enable others. So yeah, feel free to send us a message on LinkedIn, and we will be happy to assist. And look out for more exciting Steve and Dawn's magical hours coming up soon. We'll have more of a, you know, formal announcement of the stuff and things that we're working on.
Soon. Coming up soon.
Coming up soon.
In a LinkedIn inbox near you.
I'm sorry?
In a LinkedIn inbox near you, I said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and we hope that you have a great weekend after watching our lovely session today. So thanks everybody.
Cool. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers.